To get us started, actually, we're going to dive into a look at what hockey has been up to this past year.
It's pretty good.
Spoiler alert.
Wrap around the cage outside. He scores! United States still pressuring. Farmer across. Royball's in for Wallace. He scores! Out in front for Musselman. Scores! Shot fake, waiting, firing. Scores! Farmer. Shot, top shelf with the left hand. Dominant 6-1 win over Canada. Is back on its perch. 2025 World Champions.
So our affiliate's going to go for a change, and that's a tough one. A chance here for Heisey. Her shot, she scores! Tessa Janicki, your golden hero in Czechia.
There's nothing like it. I don't even know. That's insane. It was just so much fun. It just shows how strong we are as a group and how much we can persevere through anything. So I wouldn't want to do it with any other group.
She'll score from the blue line, make it 2 for Eskimori on the backhand to Pat, and she scores. What a beauty! A tic-tac-toe. She lets it go, and she scores. The arm points out, and she's ready to load home. Another chance here, drawing in, turbo, a toe save by Phillips. This will be a game to remember, and for Hilary Knight, a record-setting moment for her.
Thompson in, shoots, scores! Tage Thompson, golden goal! And the United States has won the World Hockey Championship.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. I think we grinded for this. We found a way to win that game, and that's what it's all about. Unreal performance.
Landon fires, Shiffrin save, rebound, in runner, turn to Kelleher, throws it up front, they score! Great wide pass and a quick shot, score!
Yeah, it feels amazing. It feels better than I thought it would, to be honest. So just super proud of this group and proud to be an American.
Ripped it in, they score! Throws it up front, they score!
It's been a long time coming, and it just goes to show how hard USA Hockey has worked. Kids like me and everyone in this locker room to develop us and make an impact on the world stage.
Pretty impressive year. I'll note a couple things. 10th gold for the women. The first men's gold in how long, Pat? 92 years.
92 years. We don't really like to brag about that.
The men's para ice hockey team has been dominant, and since that video was made just a few weeks ago, the women won the first ever para women's ice hockey world championship. So heck of a year. How have you done that?
You know what? I think the best part is the product of our entire organization.
Yeah.
I think the last point there, Jeremy Swayman, the goalie from our team, who spent a year in Colorado Springs in his youth hockey career, talked about how hard USA Hockey has worked, and that goes to each one of those programs, men's, women's, and sled. It comes from the grassroots. It comes from communities like Vail, where kids play hockey, become part of the game, and whether they end up on one of those teams or they give back to the game or stay in the game as a coach, an official, whatever, that's really where it comes from. That is truly our secret. We've done a really good job of growing the game with a lot of help from our friends in the National Hockey League and other groups, but it comes from the grassroots. It works its way up our structure and system, and at the highest level, we've been bent on winning.
Yeah.
And you know, it's those are the top teams, right? So men's, women's, and sled are what we'll compete in Milan next year that I know we'll get to. But then at the under 20 men's world championships, which is called the World Juniors, which is arguably the biggest tournament on the calendar every year on the men's side for a variety of reasons, we've won that in back-to-back years at under 20. So that means the next group of guys going to the NHL are pretty good. At the U18 on the men's side, we had a bronze last year, which frankly was disappointing for us, but we had a good tournament, one tough game, and our women's U18 won the silver last year. So for us, it's, you know, that's a great video. Obviously, I get goosebumps watching it. The challenge is we start over with none of those world championships again. We're defending them, but we have to go win them again and win Olympic medals this year and Paralympic medals too. So it was a really fun year though.
You touched on something there, grassroots, and I think when people think about the Olympic movement and the Paralympic movement, we can see the games, but it's a big, broad movement. I always talk about there's an alphabet soup of acronyms, USOPC, NGBs, et cetera. So for each of you, could you tell a little bit about your organization, what it does, how you work together, how you work within the IOC and then IPC as part of this broader movement?
Would you like to start on that one?
Well, let me say good evening, everyone. Thank you for making time to be with us. It's really an honor to be here. I'm a native Coloradan, so I love being part of Colorado communities. Yeah, it's true. So, at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, I say if you want to simplify what we do, our job is to field the United States team for the games. But we don't do the grassroots work, right? We don't build the pipeline that you just heard Pat talk about. We work with 60 different sport organizations across 60 different sports, and they do the hard work of building grassroots sport, of providing competition environments for young people, all the way through juniors and into the elite. And we start to get very close as partners when you start to talk about the elite athletes who are starting to wear our country's flag on their uniform. When that happens and they begin to compete on an international stage, then our global sort of worlds collide, if you will. And we start to provide support, an environment, and ultimately we partner in taking the teams, the US team, whether it's to the Summer Games or the Winter Games or even the Pan American, our continental regional games. And so our role is really in working across a number of sports. I say we're a centimeter deep across 60 sports. These guys are a mile deep in each individual sport. And then I sit in the role as the sort of head of Team USA. I have 205 peers around the world who lead their teams for their countries and take their delegations to the international games. The International Olympic movement is actually has more countries than the United Nations. There are 205 of us. The International Paralympic movement, less so. That's more in the 160, 170 range and growing, which is a great thing to see. We're one of only 5 countries in the world that actually has a unified Olympic and Paralympic team. And we're the only big country who does that. But I do think we're beginning to set a trend in that regard. So I think we'll see that happening more frequently. So that's our role. You want to talk a little bit more about?
And she definitely undersold what the USOPC does on a daily basis for all of us. So thank you for that. The USOPC is the leader of the Olympic and Paralympic movement in the U.S. And as Sarah mentioned, there's 60 organizations underneath the USOPC, USA Hockey being one of them. Our job is to be the foundation for the sport of ice hockey in America. And we provide opportunities for kids to develop and grow and ultimately become leaders and maybe Olympians or Paralympians. And at the end of the day, our job is to make sure more kids are playing hockey every year, that we try and win internationally, win a gold in every competition we go into. We have to run an effective and efficient business, and we can get into that at some point. And then we have to make sure our game is as safe as possible, both on and off the ice, for everyone who participates, whether it's on the national team or it's in a 6-year-old here in Vail. Make sure the experience is as good as it possibly can be, safe as possible, and make sure we are as welcoming and as inclusive as possible to grow our sport. And so we have a bunch of several external partners for me, the USOPC being our prime external partner in the U.S. for the Olympic movement, Paralympic movement. A big partner I mentioned earlier, the National Hockey League, is a big supporter of USA Hockey in every single way, including financially. And then external, we are members of the International Ice Hockey Federation, IIHF, and that's who puts on all of these competitions that we participate in.
And at the end of the day, if we're honest, both Pat and I's job is to make sure that this remains the best sporting nation in the world, which means you've got to develop sport at the grassroots level and you got to win at the top.
Yeah.
It's really that.
Yeah. No small feat. Having covered the Olympics for a while, I can say going into Paris, the movement was in a little bit shaky ground, right? Obviously, 2 COVID games had some issues finding hosts. We'll get into the help the U.S. friends have provided. But Sarah, when you look at coming out of the movement, this transition from this to the Winter Games, what is the state of things? What did that Games do to this movement overall in here?
Yeah, it's been incredible. The Paris Games was a bit of a a reawakening
Yeah.
for the Olympic and the Paralympic movement. Although I think the Paralympic movement's true awakening is still in front of us.
Yeah.
But we had seen some decline. The two COVID games didn't help, but the geography of the last several games presents its own challenges. Being in Asia, being in Russia, being in countries where time zones aren't friendly to TV, cultural sort of alliances aren't as friendly to the US. Lots of factors go into that. And Paris was a huge turning point. And it was in part, as everything is, a lot of hard work and collaboration across many of us in the movement, and a little bit of good luck. And, you know, sport takes both. And we got it all in Paris. And this country and the world responded to I would say the values of the movement and the spirit of competition in a way that I think reawakened our love of the Olympics and the Paralympics, frankly. And so we're feeling the wind at our back right now in a very, very real way, with 2 home games in front of us. So it's a good time to be in our business.
I'll get to those home games in a minute, but we do have the Olympics open in 142 days. I have a little countdown widget on my browser to make me anxious about that as we tick down. You know, I think for a U.S. audience, we're so used to USA topping the medal count in the Summer Olympics and the all-time medal count. The Winter Olympics, much more competitive, much more challenging. So from where each of you sit, how much harder is it to be competitive, to be one of the top countries in the world during the Winter Games?
You're first this time.
Well, it's certainly challenging. I mean, I think if we look at it, so if we have 3 teams, we'll have the men's, the women, and then the sled team in the Paralympics. And we've won each of those, right, this past year. The men's field is really deep. There's probably 4 countries that could realistically win it. We are going to be probably a favorite with our neighbors to the north. In women's hockey, there's 2 countries that can win it, and we'll be a co-favorite with our neighbors to the north. And in sled hockey, the song remains the same. There's really 2 countries that can win it, and our neighbors to the north would be the other one.
Yes.
But our expectations and what we've stated and what we continue to talk about is we believe we can win 3 gold medals next year, the men and the women and the sled team, and we've certainly never done that before. And you know, we embrace that challenge. I think our athletes do, our coaches do, our organization does. We have a lot of people behind that effort, but it's not easy. And I know, you know, on the winter side, there's 8 national governing bodies, or NGBs: USA Hockey, US Figure Skating, Speed Skating, and the others, ski and snowboard. And we all have different challenges, but I think one thing that Sarah's team has done a really good job of bringing the 8 of us together to try and share best practices, resources, work with one another, and really build a great spirit and camaraderie among the winter sports to try and support each other, help each other where we can, so that we can get back up in the medal count and be, you know, at the minimum in Milan, be in the podium as far as overall medal count. And I think that would be 30 to 32, 33 medals. I think that's kind of the numbers overall from the U.S. side for Milan. And then a longer term goal, you know, when we get to Salt Lake, to be up in the 40s and be really dominant. We've had those meetings this summer, and those were a lot of the conversations. So I know my colleagues and counterparts at the other winter sport NGBs are ready for the challenge. Everybody has unique challenges and different things to look at, but I think we have great opportunities and kind of the energy and the spirit and the support of the USOPC to get back to where we belong, ultimately at the top of the medal table.
What's that take from your part? You know, Pat, you talked about convening the Winter NGBs, and having met with a few of those while I've been in Colorado, they said the same things, right? Camaraderie, collaboration. What's that take for you to convene that?
Well, look, I mean, and by the way, I just want everybody to know, I think Pat just committed to 30 to 32 medals. Did everybody else hear that?
I'm putting it down.
I can really only bring home 3, so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key, right? The secret of our role is to add value. And the ways we add value are ways in which we can bring best practices and synergy across sport. And so that's how we think about our job. You know, we know, first and foremost, if we can get Team USA to the start line healthy, we have a leg up and we like our chances. And so we invest a lot in health and wellness. Those are things that apply no matter what sport you're playing. There are going to be nuances for sure, but at the end of the day, being very, very thoughtful about injury prevention, about health, about wellness, about keeping athletes from, something as simple as the flu or a cold a couple weeks before the games can be devastating for an athlete. And so we layer on where can we add value, and it's around those aspects. It's also around things like where can we apply technology and innovation. That could be in equipment in winter, right? It's all about speed. We think about aerodynamics a lot, and we apply aerodynamic technology across sports. So bringing these organizations into the room to talk about thematically where are there sort of sport agnostic value adds that we can bring to the table, and how can we learn from each other is what's been really successful on the winter side. And I think we're going to see the results of that when we look at the success of Team USA. It's also about simple things like how are you developing young athletes, and sometimes it's cross training and right, recruiting athletes from one sport into another sport. We recruit from summer into winter. And so there's a lot of that role that we see ourselves in, as our job is to add value in ways that other organizations can't do in their own silos. And every sport is very focused on their own sport. Our job is to see where we can connect dots across them. And on the winter side, I think we've done a nice job of that. And I think we're going to see that pay dividends in Milan Cortina. I think we're going to have the best winter games Team USA has had in maybe a couple decades.
You heard it here first, folks. And to underscore what Sarah was saying, I was chatting with Aaron McGuire, who's the CEO of USA Bobsled and Skeleton, and they hit all those points, right? That's a sport that recruits. There's a lot of track athletes, former football players who go on to become, bobsledder is not a thing you're putting your 5-year-old in. They come to this later in their athletic careers. They test their sleds in a Honda wind tunnel, right? So there's all the technology. Since we're all committing to medals up here, Pat, the U.S. men in the Olympics have not been on the podium since 1980. I'm wondering that Miracle on Ice. We've
been on the podium.
I'm sorry, apologies. At the top of the podium. Top of the podium.
Right.
And that one gold. How much is that part of the lore, and maybe something that, becomes a motivator, fire under your guys as they chase that goal?
It's huge. I mean, 1980 was a few years ago. I was young. And it had an incredible impact on my life. I just wanted to be involved in hockey because of that team. But it was a long time ago. Yeah. And we won in 1996. There was a World Cup that featured the best on best NHL players before the NHL players started going to the Olympics. And we won that in 96. And then on the men's side at the highest level, we haven't won it. We haven't won anything. We won the men's worlds last year, which is huge. That's the next part. But that tournament's a little bit different because it goes on like when the NHL playoffs are going on. So not every country gets their best players. That's part of why it's been a struggle. A huge victory for us that will forever be a milestone. Hopefully that we say, hey, we won it that year. And then the next year we won the Olympic gold medal. But I love 1980. Those guys are heroes and idols of mine forever and always will be. The 1996 guys are more guys that are now my age, who certainly aren't playing anymore. Yeah. They're on our staffs as managers and coaches. And, Bill Guerin, who's our general manager for our men's Olympic team, is the general manager of the Minnesota Wild. He was on that 96 team, and he, plain as day, told our men's Olympic team candidates, we have to win this gold medal. So highly, highly motivated, more probably pressure and expectations than we've had in a long time, which is really good and really healthy for all of us, because those guys, no one will back down from that challenge. Those, our players we have the best players in the world that can compete with anyone. And to Sarah's point, we just got to try and get to Milan healthy, and make it happen. But our guys are definitely anxious to do that and get there. I don't know, but last year, many of you may have seen, the NHL held a Four Nations Face-Off tournament in February that kind of captivated the sporting world, I would say. And we lost in overtime to the northern country. And after the game, we had kind of a place back at the hotel where a lot of the families came back to, and the players. And without me going up to our guys, 5 different guys came up to me and said, we're going to get those guys next year. We're going to win the gold medal in the Olympics. Like an hour after this game was over. It was phenomenal, but that's who our guys are right now on the men's side.
I was thinking to myself, this is the best thing that just happened to us, because now they want revenge. And they're going to get it in Milan, which I'm fired up about. It'll be fun.
Speaking of medal expectations, this is something we go to every games, and I'm asking Sarah, I'm asking members of her staff, okay, what's the expectation? They never tell me the number, so we're not, this is the closest we've gotten. But there is an internal process, right, that you guys work through. Can you walk us through what that looks like as you're going into a games, how you internally are saying, okay, we think we're going to get X here, And then, because it doesn't always work out that way, how it shakes out sometimes.
Yeah, it doesn't, look, I mean, the reality is we have a very, thanks to, and I say, I think the Vail Symposium said 90% of it is funded by sponsors and donors. So are we. Our budget's probably a little different than the Vail Symposium, but 90% of our revenue is funded by donors and sponsors. America supports Team USA and what we do. And thanks to some really savvy donors who helped us build a very robust data and analytics system, we do track incredible amounts of data, and we have a lot of performance analytics, and we have incredible data analysts who study this data very closely. So on any given day, I do know exactly what our medal expectancy is, and it's based in data and analytics. You're right. We don't like to tell the press that. It changes. An injury can vastly swing those analytics on any given day. So you never know where you're going to come up. And look, it's why we do what we do in sport. You got to play. Data and analytics and predictions can tell you everything. At the end of the day, you still got to go out on the field or on the ice or wherever it is and get it done. But we are really nicely positioned coming into Milan Cortina. But I will also say, you have to recognize when you look at a summer games, the United States, let's say we're going to average around 120-ish medals over 17 days. There's a lot more competition in those games. On the winter side, you heard us talking about, right, aspiring to 30 medals over 17 days. So the scale is vastly different, which means the swings on the winter side can be significantly more significant, much more impactful, if you will. And you can go from 30 to 27 pretty fast. That's harder to fall as far proportionately on the summer side. And it speaks to, the dominance the U.S. has had on the summer side over a long period of time is, to some degree, you have to put that in the context of scale. So on the winter side, you have an individual athlete in a sport like figure skating or ski and snowboard, where they might be a multiple medal winning athlete, can be devastating in the overall scheme of things. So we're going in incredibly well positioned. We have a really nice base of a mix of, when we look at data and analytics, we also look at pre-peak age, and post-peak age. That is all based on data and analytics of performance of athletes and based on where they are in their career journey. And we have a very nice blend of some veterans and some really strong, young, emerging athletes. There's pros and cons to all of this, right? Veterans are going to have more experience. That experience can pay dividends in performance. They're also more prone to injury. Those of you who are getting a little bit older understand your body doesn't hold up as well as you age. That happens even for young Olympians, where we may say, 28 feels young. To an athlete, 28 might feel not so young, especially if you've been on alpine skis your whole career. But at the same time, you have young athletes coming in who might have the physical stamina, endurance, fewer injuries, right? Maybe a little bit more capability from a physical perspective, but a lack of experience. The games can be overwhelming. The pressure is intense. And so we think about how we manage those different sorts of athletes in different ways. You might double down on mental health in one case, and you might double down on physical health in another case. You might think about that a little bit differently in how you manage and how you track to drive performance outcomes. So we look at all of that data, we study the analytics, and we deploy our resources accordingly.
To Sarah's point, and I always tell people this when they talk to me about my job covering the games, the Winter Olympics is so much more manageable in some regards because it's 3 times or a third of the size of the Summer Olympics. So roughly 2,500 to 3,000 Winter Olympians, more than 10,000 in the summer. So it's quite a different economy of scale. You talk about experience. You guys have in hockey the NHL players for the first time in 12 years, something that the Players Union League worked out with IAHF. What impact do you expect that to have? And then because these guys are guys who are training with their, pro clubs, where do you fit in there? Where do you come alongside in convening that team, getting them together with guys who are maybe not on NHL teams, but are going to be on your Olympic team?
No, they'll be NHL guys exclusively on our Olympic team. On the men's side, it will be exclusively NHL players. So going back a few years, a name some of you may know as hockey fans, John Van Beesbroek was a NHL goalie for 20 years. in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. John is our head of elite hockey operations, basically. He oversees men's with hands-on, and he oversees women's and sled. We have people that report to John to oversee those. But John and I, 3 years ago, said, we're going to have this. The NHL was talking about this Four Nations event or World Cup and the Olympics in 26. And oh, by the way, every spring we have a World Championship, and our biggest challenge is getting NHLers to go to Europe for 3 weeks and play for us, really as a favor or give back, to try and win a World Championship. That may sound a little callous, but these guys play 82 games and talk about injury and wear and tear. Yeah. So John and I sat down and said, listen, we need someone to be our general manager for the next 3 years, right? Because not only do we want to win the Four Nations, we want to win the Olympics, but we need to win the Men's World Championship. We had not done it in 92 years. And it's been a number for us. We've known, we haven't broadcast it, but internally, everybody knows that. So Bill Guerin is the GM of the Minnesota Wild. We enlisted Bill to be the GM for Team USA for this period, with the focus on, getting guys to come play for us who may be on the border of Olympic rosters, come to the World Championships, and so you want to be a part of this. And Bill Guerin was a player that played in 3 Olympics, played in World Championships, has unbelievable credibility. And Bill also, I give him a lot of credit, lived it. Like, he came to these events with us. He was there at the World Championships. He was there showing these guys, hey, I told you this is important to come to this. I'm here as well. And he said that to the media. So I think that for us, for the men's side, has been kind of the progression. Having the NHL in gives us the chance to have our best players on the ice together against the best players from the other countries. And the World Championship just doesn't afford that because of the timing and schedule in May, and the NHL is still going on. And the Olympics are the Olympics. I mean, there's nothing, I'm a huge NHL fan, and Commissioner Bettman is incredibly generous and helpful to USA Hockey, but the Olympics are a special and different deal than the NHL. And for us, it's the pinnacle, and all things that we do as the national governing body of the sport in ice hockey lead up to those rings. And we've done incredible work. I mean, I can get into the women's side too, but on the men's side, we created a program almost 30 years ago called the National Team Development Program, where we bring in the best 17, 18-year-old male players, and they spend 2 years in Michigan, now at an arena we bought and own in Plymouth, Michigan. They spend their 17-year-old and 18-year-old years, essentially junior and senior high school, living and training and playing and training and developing under USA Hockey to ultimately produce, for us, it was to win more internationally because we weren't back in the 90s, and to ultimately produce more high-end NHL players. We had a lot, but we felt we could produce more. And the proof has been in the pudding. Last year in that Four Nations roster, 15 of the 23 players were NTDP graduates. At our recent men's Olympic orientation camp, we had 44 NHL players there, and 30 are NTDP graduates. So not only has that program done tons for us, it's lifted all the other programs that are in the U.S. that develop players to be better and better and better, and given us, as Bill Guerin, who was on the 96 World Cup team that won it, he will say this is the deepest, best talent pool we've ever had in men's American ice hockey.
So you touched on it, and I'd be remiss as a women's sports reporter if I did not ask. But there have been hockey leagues, right, in women's hockey, but now have some stability with the PWHL. How does that help you? What's the impact of having that stable league for your players?
So it's phenomenal because the female athletes, our women's hockey players, have been pushing and fighting and working to get a pro league that really they want to have for years and years. And we've been supporting them to do that. And now that it's come to fruition, and there is the PWHL, women's pro hockey, it's changed a lot of things on the women's side that we're seeing a lot of positives on. We operate differently in how we do this, but now it gives our, post-grad professional women a place to play, train and develop, play games to get ready for the Olympics. Now we'll have, 23 players. We have a roster of 30 players right now. 10 are actually current collegians. 20 are in the PWHL. And by the time we get to announce a team in late December, early January, we'll have a healthy mix of college players and pro players. In every previous Olympics, and we have one Olympian here in Pam Dreyer, a goalie from Brown University and originally from Alaska, who's with us tonight. But Pam and her teammates and other teams, we would have a residency program in the Olympic year where we'd bring the team together in September or beginning of October, and they would spend that whole time frame together, living, training, playing under Team USA and playing against college competition, some high-level boys competition, playing against other countries. And now we'll have 1 week a month where we'll have training camp and then competition, but these players are back in their college programs, back in their pro programs where they're getting training and development every day to advance as players, and then also play competitive games all the time. So it's really different. We've never had that for our pro age players leading into the Olympics. Now, there's a risk of injury because they're not under our direction for that time frame, but it helps us with depth of player pool because you have players that can stay in women's hockey now because they're earning a salary at the pro level. Now it's not millions of dollars, but they can play and stay and be part of Team USA and help our depth and give us a better chance to ultimately win the game we have to win at the Olympics for the women's team. And we have a deeper pool of players overall. We've done our program, and women's team and coaches have done a really good job integrating a younger group of players 2 or 3 years ago to start to develop. So these players are now, several of them are like 5th-year college players this season. So they are a little bit older, and they're in a great spot that we think we're going to have a great mix of youth, but experienced youth. And then on the high end, we have some experienced leaders that'll be back for, Hilary Knight she's our captain, so I'm not giving any news reports here, but she's likely going to play in her 5th Olympics. We've never had a player do that, and she was one of our leading goal scorers last year at the World Championships. So we have that great balance, and I think the PWHL will help that for us moving forward because women can stay in the game and play longer, whereas that opportunity wasn't there for players in the past. Their careers were shorter because they had to move on to try and earn a living, frankly.
Yeah. One thing I'd be remiss if I didn't ask in the context of the Winter Olympics, right? Russia, I think, has been an issue in sort of every games I think I've been able to cover. They will not be there in hockey. They remain banned. How does that impact the hockey tournament? How does that impact you, Sarah, from the things you need to advocate forward from your position to, just deal with some of the things that have come from Russia?
Yeah, look, a reasonable part of my job is somewhere between managing geopolitical conflict and diplomacy. And that's just real, right? It depends on the day and depends on the topic. We're diplomats in many ways. Pat can't say the word Canada. I'll say it. I get it. Yeah. It's okay. And the fact of the matter is, we want to pound them, right? In every sport. And on the winter side, there are rivalries that are intense. At the same time, I will also tell you, as we're planning the logistics and our work around Milan Cortina, our medical teams and Canada's medical teams are sharing resources because we have such a fragmented footprint in Milan Cortina that their doctors and our doctors are saying, look, 75% of our athletes are going to be in this location, 75% of your athletes are going to be in that location. Send your lead doctor there. We've got our lead doctor here, and they've got sort of partnerships. So we're diplomats and friends, and we're rivals, right? It's what's beautiful about sport. And that's exactly the message we want to bring to communities is sport makes better communities and societies because we can be friends and then we can go and compete and want to kill each other and then we shake hands and we go have a beer, right? That's how this works. And so we exemplify that in the work that we do as well. And I think that's an important piece of it. We don't do that with Russia. We don't share medical resources, right? We have a very difficult and challenged dynamic with Russia. And in sport, it's born from the inherent belief that they don't play by the rules, right? And the doping environment there runs deep and long. And so there's a huge amount of frustration that comes. And if you talk to Team USA athletes, they will say, I have friends who are Russian athletes, right? I have friends who are Russian athletes, that this isn't a personal thing, but the country itself has proven not to want to play by the rules that we hold dear in our country, and that makes it very challenging. And so there can be a lot of tension there that exists. Then you layer on what Russia did back in the 2022 sort of Winter Games time. There is this thing called the Olympic truce. And if you participate in the Olympic Games as a country, you sign up for the Olympic truce, which essentially means we lay down our differences during this period of the Games, and we all show up under this sort of common understanding of sportsmanship. And Russia attacked Ukraine in the middle of that, and they have been punished by the Olympic community broadly and the Paralympic community for that. They violated the Olympic truce and they are suspended as a result of it. And that conflict hasn't been resolved. And so they are still sitting in the proverbial penalty box. And that's where we sit. They are trying very hard. And the unfortunate thing is there are wonderful human beings who are incredibly elite athletes who carry Russian passports that are suffering at the whims of what's going on. Not their fault. And none of us want to say, because you're Russian, you're an awful human being. But we also can't look the other way and ignore some of the very real dynamics that are going on. So it's always a very difficult dynamic of where does the country and the government play vis-a-vis the athletes and their opportunity? And it's bumpy and messy, and Russia sits at the top of the bumpy list.
And again, something has to be resolved first for any of this to happen in the hockey world. So I preface it with saying that. We miss Russia in international hockey.
Yeah.
They've traditionally been one of the powers.
Yep.
They're also a big economic driver. As you talk about hockey and I talk about the teams we go deeper on, right after US and Canada, you get Finland and Sweden and Germany and Switzerland and Slovakia and Czech, and you go down, the countries aren't as big. Frankly, right now, or historically, US and Canada combined have more hockey players than the rest of the world combined. And so Russia is a big part of the international hockey landscape, fabric, and history. They're a pain in the neck to deal with, but they have really good hockey players. And they were really coming along on the women's side too, which is better for women's hockey. I always say, listen, I want women's hockey to be better. I just don't want us to lose to make it happen. But the Russians were really coming along to be a viable contender and another tough out for both US and Canada, and that's important to make the women's game even deeper and really similar on the sled side. So we missed them from a competitive and economic standpoint, but I echo or would share everything that Sarah said. There's a lot of other stuff that goes beyond that. So it is what it is, and in team sports, I don't know when they'll be back. It's different than individual athletes. And again, there's lots of Russian players in the NHL, and they're over here playing and competing in the NHL. And, one's the leading goal scorer in the history of the NHL, and he's beloved as an athlete. But, he's not going to probably get a chance to play with a Russian crest on his jersey likely again.
Yeah, in his career. The hockey players are interesting to me for context. In the Summer Olympics, right, we have NBA players, and typically they're apart, right? I remember in Rio they were on a cruise ship. Hockey players don't do that. They embrace the spirit of the games. They're in the village. What does that mean to you guys in your sport? And then from a practical standpoint, part of what you're doing on the diplomacy front is working with the State Department, working with law enforcement on security. So how do you do that? I mean, they're probably not likely to get accosted by, some figure skaters or something, but tell me about that experience.
I'm certainly extremely biased, having been a lifelong hockey player and been around the sport my entire professional career, but also my entire life as a kid and whatever. Hockey players are unique and different in a very, very good way most of the time. And I say it all the time. Our biggest thing is that in hockey, when you're 5 or 6 and you start, you're learning how to fall down and get up. And I think there's a humbleness and something about our sport that is our fabric. And hockey's not an easy sport for families to get into. But when they get into it, it's a family commitment investment, which I think has huge benefits for a family and whatever. And I have 4 younger brothers. We all played college hockey. Our dad coached, our mom did everything. So I'm extremely biased, but there's some about hockey that is, I think, unique and special to our sport and our people in our sport. Yeah. And so since the first time the NHL players, the men's players came to the Olympics in '98, they've been in the athlete village every time. And our guys, so we haven't been there since 2014. Yeah. They were planning to come to Beijing. The NHL was set, and then we had the relapse with COVID, and they couldn't make it happen. But every time the NHL has come, the NHL players, and again, that's Americans, Swedes, Canadians, Finns, they have all been in the village. They don't do anything separate. And it's important to, I know our players on the men's side, that's what they want to do. Like, they want to be around our women's players. They want to be around the other athletes that are in the village, and they want the whole experience because they only come for a shorter time too. Like our men, the opening ceremonies will be Friday, February 6th. Our men will leave New York on the 7th and come over the 8th. And then they'll play games 3 days later, and then it just goes. So they're kind of a compacted one. Our women will be in Milan probably by January 30th, so they'll have a little more time to engage and experience it. But the men, and I haven't spoken to athletes from other countries, but I think they're pretty similar in that hey, we're coming to the Olympics. We want to have the Olympic experience. They've been to World Championships, they've been to other events, but the Olympics is special. And I think that, again, I'm thrilled that it wasn't even an issue. Like when people have brought it up, I'm like, yeah, they're in the village. Like, where else would they be?
We get to send Pat the bill for the damage that gets done in the village when the hockey team wins the gold medal.
I'm going to just leave that alone. No report.
Anybody in here who plays hockey doesn't need any explanation.
Yeah. You touched on the Olympic experience, right? And I think one of the things that's unique about the games is the multi-sport environment. Is you have, a figure skater talking to a speed skater, talking to someone from curling, all that. These games may be less so that. So for anyone not familiar with Milan and Cortina and the layout here, what are the challenges logistically, operationally for your teams from a hospitality donor standpoint that you're up against with these specific games?
Well, what is being called the Milan Cortina Games is really, there are 6 villages. And the distance between Milan and Cortina is about a 5-hour drive on a 2-lane mountain road. So it isn't a unified sort of experience. We'll be very, very spread out. So we'll have athletes in 6 different locations. And we'll have staff in multiple locations. And there are sports that are anchored. Certainly hockey has the benefit of being in one place. Figure skating has the benefit of being in one place. But when you look at an organization like ski and snowboard, their men's and women's alpine are 3 hours apart. And that's just the alpine. Then you get to the snowboarding and all of the other, and set the cross country, and then the biathlon guys are yet in another place. So it's very, very spread out. And so logistically, it creates, you heard me talk about collaboration with actually there are several countries collaborating on the medical side for that reason. Having the equipment that you need, especially trauma readiness in winter sport, trauma is a thing. And so having those pieces in place across 6 different villages is a logistical puzzle that we're all working on and trying to figure out. So that's real. When you get to the spectator perspective, it's also challenging. You're not going to be able to go see a morning ski run and then go watch figure skating that night. It's just practically not going to happen. So you create experiences the way you can, and you build schedules that are practical, and people will have to make choices for sure. We'll take probably, I'm guessing, 350 to 500 donor families with us as part of our Team USA delegation, and we will very much schedule and program that to create a great experience, but it will have a little bit less flexibility than certainly what you would have seen in Paris, where it was literally choose your own adventure because you could get anywhere. This will not be that. It will be a little bit more fragmented. And I don't think the Winter Games will see that again until we come back to Utah in 2034. I will tell you, put 2034 on your calendar. It will be the most extraordinary Winter Games that's happened. 1, because we have a very long runway. 2, because the infrastructure exists and it's incredibly self-contained. And so you will be able to choose your own adventure in a place like Utah. That's going to be very hard to find in other parts of the world. The footprint, the demands of what needs to happen for something like alpine skiing versus the number of sheets of ice and the type of ice that you have to have for figure skating and hockey. And it is just going to, it's going to require more distributed winter games. And we saw that in Beijing. We will see the same thing in 2030 in the French Alps. They're not calling that a city in France, notice. There's a very good reason why this is going to be the 2030 French Alps, because it's going to be spread across France. And I think that's just going to be the reality of what the winter footprint looks like as we go forward in the games, maybe with the exception of what Mother Nature has given Utah and the proximity of those mountains to the size of the valley and the infrastructure and size of that city is going to provide something that I don't think any other city in the world can offer. You touched on ski and snowboard already. It is, as you mentioned, very spread out. So want to jump very quickly, if we could, James, to highlight reel, and we'll get into maybe some of the stars that folks can expect to see from Team USA in Milan.
score. Shorthanded goal. Hilary Knight.
It is goal for Team USA. And Huckabee now is the final roller. Huckabee for the USA. But it's Aaron Jackson's gold medal. He's the Olympic Winter Games champion. Sana Masters, Paralympic champion in the para-biathlon.
Lindsay Jacobellis will claim the gold medal.
That run right there, that is guaranteed gold. Diggins dashing towards a new level of Olympic greatness. The United States surges in love.
Oh my word, he skied the ball brilliantly.
It is USA winning Paralympic gold medal.
Very exciting, very exciting. Now, we saw many of them there, but I think one thing that's unique about the Olympics is the ability to capture an audience through storytelling, right? You have every 4 years that your games come along. When you look to Team USA broadly and in hockey, who are the people whose stories that, you know, people here sitting back here in the States can get behind and watch in Milan?
I'll
Don't say the hockey people, that's
Cut
for
me
me.
off.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Leave the hockey ones for me, please.
You got it. Look, it's awesome. I mean, let's start in figure skating, right? Ilya Malinin will, I think, maybe actually make Nathan Chen look like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what Ilya has the capability to do on the men's figure skating side is extraordinary, and maybe my favorite moment of Beijing was watching Nathan Chen. So I say that from a place of complete admiration and awe of what both of those two have accomplished. But Ilya is young, very young, and he is coming on the scene from a men's figure skating perspective in an amazing way. We likely could win 3 golds in figure skating, male, female, and male, female, the team, and probably dance as well. So we could win 4. Madison and Evan will likely, I would imagine this will be their last games. They've never said that, but that's my guess. They've been at it a while, and this could be the one, this could be their swan song. So the figure skating is going to be unbelievable, and the U.S. is going to be really, really strong, and we've got a nice, very deep bench in figure skating. I think you saw John Schuster in the curling, right? They won gold in Pyeongchang in 2018. And Schuster and his team were sort of our number one team again in Beijing. And I think we will see them actually get replaced by a young team who are going to be coming up on the curling side, who we'll see. You know, we have not historically been excellent in curling relative to the world, but we've got some young athletes who are working very, very hard right now to earn their spot and show up in curling, which will be fun to watch. When you look at bobsled skeleton, we have strength and we have veterans there. We have some younger athletes. Don't know who actually will end up on the team for the games yet, but we have a deep bench there. And again, a potential competition between some veterans who've been around and are multi-medal winners with some younger athletes who are trying to displace them. So that's going to be fun and one to watch for sure. Ski and snowboard is deep and broad, right? I mean, we're good in a lot of ways there. It's going to be very interesting to see whether Lindsey Vonn can make the team. And if she can, you know, what that looks like. I know she is motivated. Everybody is waiting for Michaela to have her next moment and see what happens there. So the women's sort of alpine is going to be widely watched. And we've got a pretty nice bench on that side of things. When you get into the snowboard, I mean, we tend to shine in the snowboard, and a lot of the aerials and things on the snow side, we're pretty consistent and will be good again. So that will be fun. What am I forgetting?
Jordan Stolz.
Speed skating.
Yeah.
Jordan Stolz. Holy cow. Thank you. I'm surprised I didn't start with that.
Yeah.
I actually was with Eric Hayden in Utah last week, and I said to Eric, "Are you watching Jordan? And do you think he's gonna is he gonna fill the shoes that you've left that nobody's filled?" And I think Jordan, he might. If he doesn't here, I think he will in 2030. He's young. If you haven't watched Jordan Stolz, holy Moses, you need to watch him. This guy is a speed skater who, I mean, just the fact that I put him in the same category as Eric Hayden tells you all you need to know. This kid is amazing. The question is, he's young and he's new, and you know, can he step up and perform to his potential in his first games? I don't think any of us know. If he does, it is going to be a thing to watch. If he doesn't, then we're going to see him do it in 2030, and I hope he just sticks around for 34 because he's that good and he's going to be amazing to watch. So he's really fun. We have great female speed skaters as well. You saw Erin Jackson in the video, Brittany Bowe. The speed skating side of things is going to be really strong as well. So, I mean, you heard me say at the beginning, I think we're going to see a better Team USA on balance than we've seen in a couple decades. We have amazing, amazing athletes, and that's shy of the 3 gold medals that Pat's going to win.
I keep saying it out loud. I'm trying to manifest it, everybody. I keep saying it out loud the more I say it. Well, the good news is, just remember, I don't pick our teams. We have people that do that know a lot more than me about our players. With that said, on the men's side, we actually have already picked 6 players for the team as part of the NHL agreement and arrangement, and 2 of them happen to be brothers. Matthew and Brady Kachuk, whose father, Keith, played on the 96 World Cup team. Matthew and Brady are the absolute best mix of in-your-face American brashness and swagger with the skill to get it done in a game. They are tough. They are not shy in front of a microphone or a camera. And they are our coach, Mike Sullivan, is the head coach now of the New York Rangers. And he's like, I want to play with that American swagger. Like, that's what we're about. And these 2 guys, like, embody that. We have a lot of great players, but the Kachuk brothers will very likely, just for their probable TV appearances, be the breakout stars of our team. And they'll deliver. We just need them to be healthy. So that's on the men's side. We have 4 other players that have been named that are all great players. On the women's side, I mentioned Hilary Knight. She's been our captain. She's going for her 5th Olympics. I think she's got a pretty good chance to make the team. Hilary is an incredible player and still one of the smartest players on the team, and an incredible goal scorer, which is still a challenge in women's hockey. We don't have enough goal scoring. We have some good goaltenders, Pam, but we don't have enough goal scoring. And then we have Kendall Coyne-Schofield, who Kendall has played this, I think, will be Kendall's 4th. Kendall will be going for her 4th Olympic team. Oh, and by the way, she had a child 2 years ago, and she's back. And she's as committed, as focused, as energized as ever. And it was fun last week at our women's camp in Plymouth, Michigan, our arena. All the players would come in for breakfast, and I'd be there. And then Kendall would come in with Drew, her 2-year-old son, who would say, "Hi, Pat," and hi to all the players, and hilarious. But Kendall Coyne's been a stud for a long, long time. And then 2 young players that are not, I mean, they're known names in the hockey community. They're not really outside of that yet, but Olympians have a chance to be breakout stars. And I know we have at least 1 Wisconsin Badger in the back of the room. So 2 names to remember. Caroline Harvey, who will actually be playing in her 2nd Olympics. She played in Beijing as an 18-year-old. She played in the Olympics before she went to college. Didn't play a ton in that, but she has developed into the best defenseman in the world, and arguably the best player in the world right now. Caroline is that good. She's still at Wisconsin. And her teammate at Wisconsin, Layla Edwards, will be, assuming she makes a team, and again, she's got a pretty good chance, she'll be the first African-American female to play on a U.S. hockey team in the Olympics. And she is extremely talented. She's so talented that she was one of the leading goal scorers in the country last year at the University of Wisconsin, and we have her playing defense for us because she's that good of a hockey player, and she brings an incredible dimension. And frankly, with Caroline and Layla, we can almost have one of them on the ice for the entire game, which is a pretty good luxury to have. So those are 2 of our younger players that I think will be if we're going to be successful in the Olympics, Caroline Harvey and Layla Edwards are going to be 2 of the next generation of players to do it. And if I may, on the Paralympic side, sled hockey, we have had a dominant program in sled hockey. We've won the last 4 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals. And right now, if you lined up the best, and the sled hockey, they have like 15-player rosters, a little bit shorter than men's and women's, are 23 or 25. If you lined up the 8 best players in the world in sled hockey, the first 6 would be members of Team USA. That's how good our group is, and it goes back to the pipeline. We have a pipeline of sled hockey now. It used to be a lot of time we would have disabled veterans that would come up and get introduced to the sport, which was tremendous, and we still have that. but we have a player named Declan Farmer who will go down as the greatest sled hockey player of all time and is our captain, an unbelievable person, unbelievable player. And then behind Declan, you have Brody Roble, you have Josh Pauls, who's our captain, who is an incredible player, Jack Wallace, who almost made the summer para games in Paris as a kayaker. We'll be back in our para sled team. We just have, it's incredible. And they did, the para sled team did lose, not this past season, the year before, to Canada for the first time in like 3 years. So those guys are
salty about it.
They are not going to be, they are going to be really fun to watch, and they are incredible athletes. And that's all I say about them now at this point, because they're incredible athletes, incredible people, and the things they do to be able to play hockey is amazing. But they're elite athletes, world class, and fortunately for us, they play on our team.
Just wanted to note too, we said 3 gold medals. There's no para women's ice hockey yet in the Paralympics. That is still emerging. This was the first World Championship, so not one that you can win there. But to the Paralympics, you said something earlier.
Just really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I forgot Campbell Wright.
Okay.
So that's another name to write down. We might win our first ever medal for the United States in biathlon with Campbell Wright in Milan Cortina. First medal ever in the history of the country. So watch. I can't believe I forgot Campball. Watch him.
You did pretty good,
This is the
Sarah. I
only
mean, you
winter-
rattle off a lot of names.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we give her grace on that one, right?
This is the only winter sport where the U.S. has not won a medal historically. You mentioned something on the Paralympics earlier. You think they still haven't had their moment. What do you see? How much are you investing, both of you, behind that and ensuring, it's a crowded sports landscape even for the Olympic Games this year. Super Bowl, NBA All-Star, and that's just what's on NBC. But ensuring that those have their moment, have the attention and support and everything that you have on the Olympic side.
Look, I mean, I'll say, we've been both extraordinarily committed, but I would also humbly brag that we've been leaders in very aggressively promoting the Paralympic movement and the integration and inclusion of sort of One Team USA. That said, I think when you talk about consumer audiences and building audience and building a fan base, the discrepancy between the Olympics and the Paralympics is still, it's a chasm, right? It's a huge gap. And I think until we have this country experience Paralympics at scale live, we won't see that gap narrow that much. We're making gains, but the gains are small. I think with each games and with each, NBC has done a great job, right? They add coverage every single games. They do more and they do more and they do more. And frankly, when you look at the results for the Paralympic Games in Paris from a viewership perspective, they get compared to the Olympics and you see the huge chasm. If you compare them to a lot of other sports on television, they're actually getting the same kind of viewership as your run-of-the-mill NWSL game. So it's real, but it still lives in the shadows of Olympic comparison, and that's a tricky thing. I think when you see Paralympic sport live, you all of a sudden, you understand it, you get it, you feel it, you appreciate the athleticism of it in a way that just doesn't happen on television. And so that's why I say, I think when we both have the LA Paralympic Games and then the Utah Paralympic Games, I think it will be a turning point for what that product is from a just pure sports business audience fan generation perspective. And I say all the time, if you want someone to believe in and understand the Paralympics, you have to take them. Take them live, because once you've seen it live, the discussion is over. But until you've seen it live, it's difficult to grasp. I think that's true of a lot of sport. But we all have, as this country in particular, we get exposure to so many sports live our whole lives. And Paralympic sport just hasn't seen that kind of exposure. It doesn't exist here at that kind of scale yet.
And to be blunt, in hockey, winning helps. Like we support 7 different disabled disciplines within USA Hockey. We have sled is the highest one, and that's the one that's in the Paralympics, and that gets a notoriety. But with that, in another level, we have blind hockey, we have deaf, we have standing amputee, we have warrior hockey for veterans, we have special hockey for autistic and other. I mean, we have all these disciplines and kids are doing this across the country and adults now too. And a lot of that, our growth has been tied to the success of our sled team because they bring such a spotlight to other opportunities in hockey. And I think, I've been fortunate to see Paralympics and Paralympic competition athletes, and they're incredible elite athletes, and they're there to win at every competition, right? They may not win at every competition in the different sports, whether it's, curling was incredible to watch, or any of the skiers and snowboarders in the Paralympics is amazing to watch, but they're there to compete and win. Like, it's not, this is great and whatever. They're overcoming something, and they're in the Paralympics, but they are there to compete as much as any other athlete in the world. It's incredible to watch, and I certainly hope, again, from the hockey part, we can do our job, keep winning, and help bring notoriety to the other sports as part of it too.
A lot to look forward to in February and March for the Paralympics in Milan. Thank you all for a great discussion. I think we're going to open it up to some questions and take more from around the room.
Thank you. I have a question, actually, Pat, sorry, not a hockey question, but long-term, what do you think of the future of the Olympic Games? Venues are harder and harder to get to step up. There are probably a lot of people in this room who can remember in 1976, Denver and Vail were going to get the games and voters turned it down. I think Montreal is still paying for their games. How do we, going forward, do the Olympics have a future?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And I'll tell you, I mean, this is not going to surprise you. My unequivocal answer is yes, but that's not just because I love it. There is a very, very concerted effort happening right now by the movement broadly, right? The International Olympic Committee sort of sits at the helm of that. But the membership of the International Olympic Committee is just constructed of individuals from all of these countries, of which we have 4 voices among about the 100. We have as many representatives on the International Olympic Committee as any country out there. And so we spend a lot of time with those individuals being very thoughtful about the question you just asked, which is, what is it going to take to sustain this product? And the reality is, we know there's some evolution that has to happen. There's evolution in what the product is and how it shows up, and there's evolution in what the revenue and the business model is that surrounds it. Both of those things are being actively worked on and talked about, I would say, very much in the sort of closed door rooms, as you would imagine, but now also in the public. And so the IOC just elected a new president. Her name's Kirsty Coventry. She's likely to be the president for 12 years. Kirsty is an Olympic swimmer from Zimbabwe who swam at the University of Auburn and went on to win gold medals. She is the hero of her country as it relates to the Olympic Games, but she's also an American college, sort of a product of the American collegiate system, if you will, has had both of her children in this country and understands both the sophistication of the commercial sport environment in our country and the sort of nature of the global sports product around the world. And she has the challenge of figuring out, how do you balance the fact that, I mean, and this is literally true. There are countries who call us and say, I've got a talented young swimmer who wants to train in the sport of swimming, but we don't have a pool in my country. Can you take them in your country? Right? That's real. And so you start with that as grounding, coupled with us who are saying, I mean, the abundance of riches we have from a sport perspective in this country is extraordinary. And yet, right, we will still say every day, we don't have the resources we need to do all the things we want to do. And both of those things are true. Both can be true. We see huge opportunity to continue to advance sport in very real ways, while there are countries who are trying to figure out how to build a pool. And so Kirsty has the challenge of figuring out, how do you balance that, right? How do you move an entire global sport ecosystem along when the chasm between the haves and the have-nots is very, very wide? But just last week, she announced a series of working groups around what she's called her Fit for the Future sort of agenda, if you will, as the new president of this organization. And 2 of them, one is about the product and the other is about the commercial business model. Those are really important topics that are going to get talked about to ensure that this is evolving in a way that it is both sustainable, but that it also is economically viable into the future. If you don't provide the business model that becomes a self-sustaining economic model, then we get into the dynamics of countries who can buy their way into these games. And we know we're seeing that start to happen with the onset of a lot of money coming out of the...
Goodness.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That was just lightning, although for a second I wasn't sure. Wow.
It's the IOC.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of money's coming from the Middle East. A lot of money has come from China. Some of these countries who are very much and unapologetically wanting to use sport as a tool to drive their position in the global geopolitical landscape. That's a position that we have held for a long time. And people say, how can these countries be doing this? And my answer is, we've done it. We wrote the book on how to do it, right? We built the brand of this country on sport in many ways, and we continue to do it. We just do it by our own set of values and standards. Those might be different than the way others think about it. But we want to hold that position, and we want to make sure that the values that we hold dear are the ones that stay pervasive in sport. But this is a messy world, and it's going to take some real work. But is this product viable for the long term? 100% yes, but it's going to have to evolve.
I guess it's my turn. So thank you. This was really interesting. I represent the island nation of Grenada, who about 8 or 10 years ago had our first gold medal with Karani James in the 400 meters. So even little countries like Zimbabwe and Grenada have a chance. Unrelated to that, nobody ever clapped for me before.
Right.
Two unrelated questions. Number one, I know that there's 195 countries in the world, but I think you mentioned 205 groups that can participate. I'm wondering who these other people are. And second question, in sports like basketball and ice hockey, where we have professional teams in the Olympics, why don't we just pick up a team that's already working together and already knows each other and make that our Olympic team?
Do you want to take the countries?
Well, I'll just
take
say,
that one?
so there are 205 nations recognized by the International Olympic Committee. The list is on their website, so I can't tell you what would be the discrepancy between the list you reference and the 205, but that is what is recognized by the IOC.
I'll jump in there with one. It becomes a political thing, but Taiwan becomes Chinese Taipei in the context of the games, right? So that's how you get a few situations like that where you get above 195. Yes.
There is a
There's an
refugee.
Olympic refugee
There is also a refugee team. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And in hockey, for a team sport, the best players in the world are in the NHL. But if you took the Boston Bruins, not that they won it all last year, but if you took the Boston Bruins, they get a lot of Americans, they get a lot of Canadians, they get a lot of Swedes, they get some Finns. So it's international. I think you'd look at basketball rosters similar to that too. So you can't just take, back in the day, before there were before there were recognized professionals from North America, like way back, there were teams like a Boston team went and represented the U.S. They won like the national championship. They were a team from Boston that then went and represented the U.S. in the Olympics. But that's not going to happen anytime soon anymore, because hockey and basketball and most team sports, most things are global these days. So that's why they wouldn't pick up and do that.
Thank you. My question is, you referenced the collegiate pipeline of athletes that come and support many of our Olympians. So I listened to a presentation by an athletic director who is forecasting a very challenging pipeline as NIL and the portal refigures all of athletic sports. He has 81 Division I teams and says 95% of his future revenue will be football and basketball, and most of his other collegiate sports are going to suffer greatly. And then the consequence of that to our our Olympians, that's what my question is.
Yep. So you've highlighted probably one of the most important macro sort of changes and evolutions that's happening in the United States right now. If you went and talked to the world and looked at the history books, the US sports system is the envy of the world because we built an education-based sports system a long, long, long time ago. And, you know, unfortunately, that system started to crumble first in the elementary, middle school, high school, as PE classes started getting dropped and budgets got pulled. So where we are from the sort of primary, secondary education space is worse today than we've ever been since the system's been created. It's a bad thing. It's not a good problem. But what has replaced it is a pay-for-play system in which parents are now spending a lot of money to put their kids into club systems and travel teams and all of this. So we're still playing. It's just the kids who have money are the ones playing and the kids who don't have money are the ones not playing. That's what we've created so far in this country. Now the college system is getting threatened for maybe different but also economically driven reasons, where football is generating and has been from the beginning of time the vast majority of resources coming into collegiate programs. Those resources are being used to fund the whole athletic department budget. And now as these schools are starting to feel the pressure of distributing that revenue to the athletes who are playing, which is not the wrong thing to do, but the way it's happening is going to force a very rapid shift in the way those budgets are managed. And the question and the threat is, are these schools then, in order to stay competitive in football, if you raise a new dollar, are you going to spend all of that dollar on football, 90% of that dollar on football, and what happens to the preservation of broad-based sport on campus? So if you go look at my voice, particularly in Washington, over the course of the last 2 years, this has been the topic where I have been the loudest and will continue to be the loudest. So the House right now has a bill, it's called the SCORE Act, that was supposed to go to the floor this week. We probably will go to the floor sometime, certainly before the end of October. The bill isn't perfect by any stretch, but it is a federal law that's been drafted right now bipartisan that does at least mandate that schools who participate in this whole revenue sharing structure and receive the benefits of this legislation, which is a lot of antitrust protection and some liability protection. They also are mandated to preserve and maintain at least 16 sports on their campuses. That's not, I'll say the good of it is it's recognizing a mandate to preserve broad-based sport. The bad of it is most of these schools today are supporting somewhere between 20 and 25, 26, 27 sports. So it's still giving them massive latitude to cut sort of non-football sports. And men's basketball is in there to a degree, but the money here is really football money. So it is messy. College sports is going through a very, very tumultuous moment in time. The optimism I have is the demand for young people, whether you're in elementary school or the collegiate system, the demand for students to want to compete in sport on a college campus is going up, not down. This country understands how to respond to demand. We will respond to this. The question is, what does it look like and how does it happen and who takes a leadership role in it? And we are right in the middle of it every day on that topic, and believe very strongly in the preservation of broad-based sport in our education system. It is the secret sauce that makes sport in this country run. And if you believe in that, I will tell you, and sport in this country makes better people and better communities. And if we lose that position in sport, we are not going to like the world we see on the other side of it. And I will tell everybody who will listen to me, I will fight on that issue.
And I would, everything Sarah said, and this is in what I covered, this is sort of an existential thing in the movement. I would also add, in the context of Title IX, if you look at a lot of Olympic and to a much lesser degree, but Paralympic success, part of why the USA has done so well is because Title IX has given us a massive advantage over the rest of the world, which they are catching up, right? Like that is not a foregone thing, but I can tell you, going into Paris, I knew that more American women would win medals than men. I would venture to say the same thing for LA, and that's been historically true for every game since London. And so that's also under significant threat by all of this. And so there's a lot of pushing back from that side too.
One quick thing of interest on the college side, as we sit here in a very wintry town, and in the winter side, USA Hockey is the only of the 8 national governing bodies in the winter movement that has a meaningful collegiate pipeline. So it's different for us. Like there's no luge, there's no NCAA luge, there's no NCAA biathlon. I mean, there's a limited, but those aren't really where the athletes come from that compete in the Olympics. So it is different in the winter side. Now, again, some were athletes in different sports that come to those sports, but it's a huge concern. And frankly, for us too, and Sarah and I have had this conversation. One thing is there's a lot of other countries that are sending athletes to compete in colleges in the U.S. And what does that mean? Less spots for American students to compete in college and train for this. So it's a challenge. So ultimately, our job at USA Hockey is to develop more players that can take those spots to compete for American universities in the U.S. and ultimately for Team USA.
That's right.
Sarah, I'd like to ask you a question about money. You have talked about it a little bit, but we're used to in sports, we see teams that spend the most money, they tend to be the most successful. In the Olympics, two are most important rivals, Russia and China. You would think, whether this is a characterization right or wrong of state-sponsored Olympic teams. So I would like you to handicap the U.S. Olympic Committee and about how would you compare our support for our teams compared to these state-sponsored? And the second question would be, where is our support coming from? How much of it is private sector and how much of it is state-sponsored, i.e. government-supported?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I love that you asked that question because this is my shtick, and now you're going to give me a chance to give it. We are one of the only countries in the world that gets zero government funding for our Olympic team. Russia and China is 100% funded by the government. We get zero, not a dollar. When we host the games in our country, the government will absolutely provide a lot of support, security, infrastructure, things like that. But for the team itself, all of our dollars are raised privately. This year, well, I'm gonna take our economics. We budget and we manage money in 4-year cycles because of the fluctuations that happen in games years versus non-games years. So we often talk about economics because we even out those ebbs and flows over the course of a quadrennial or a 4-year cycle. In this quad cycle, we'll be about $1.5 billion organization over the 4 years. And all of that, I'm going to say roughly 80% of that, maybe 75% of that is commercial money coming from broadcast rights, sponsorship, and licensing deals predominantly. Now, some of that is global relationships where we share a portion of it. Some of it is domestic-only partnerships that are exclusively sort of Team USA. So there's a few different categories that feed into that. The other 20 to 25%, and it's growing significantly, is philanthropic. This year, and I can't believe I get to say this out loud, but I'll tell you, last year in 2024, we raised $87.5 million and set a record for fundraising. This year, we will hit $200 million. It's extraordinary. Yeah. This country supports us in incredible ways. And the vast majority of our philanthropy is coming from this country's high net worth individuals, the most generous individuals. For anybody who follows philanthropy, right? Fewer people in this country are giving, but the ones who are giving more. And we are recipients of that. We have an incredibly generous group of individuals who support what we do. And we will continue to work really hard to drive marketing value, to drive those sponsorships and media rights and right merchandising. Every time you buy a Team USA shirt, it helps, right? All the little things help. And the philanthropy is becoming incrementally important to us as a size of our, sort of proportionate size of our revenue. And we're working really hard. One of our top priorities is our athletes are not making enough money. And job number one is to recruit the best athletes in this country to play as long as they're the best, right? And we lose athletes because they cannot economically stay in it, or they can't get in the first place. And so, when you talk about sort of what is my killer metric is we need this country's best athletes to choose this. And I will never take that for granted. And if we're going to make that happen, we have to make sure that the economic barriers aren't so big that they can't rationally make that choice. And that's where we raise money.
Can you tell about the Ross Stevens gifts and how that goes to?
Yeah, so the $200 million we're raising this year is mind-blowing. 100 million of it came from one individual. A gentleman named Ross Stevens gave us a $100 million gift this year, and it is a gift that will build the basis of a long-term endowment. So in Milan Cortina in 2026, the athletes who make that team will be the first group of athletes ever who, when they make that team, will be given a $100,000 grant and a $100,000 life insurance policy. And the idea behind this is to start to help these athletes plan for their futures. The transition, I see you nodding. I know you know how hard that transition is. It is very difficult to give up a big chunk of your life. And frankly, the most impactful earning years, right? The average age of an Olympian is 28, 29. These are not college kids. These are folks who are giving up the first decade of their earning potential to do this and walking out with nothing saved in the bank and absolutely no qualifications to walk into a job. And so we've got to start to fix some of that. And the Ross Stevens gift is to start to put some money in the bank for these guys so that when they find themselves later in life, they don't feel like the sacrifice was too great.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. You got a closing thought?
Do we get a closing?
Yeah, so you've had a chance to get to know our audience a little bit, and you know the area. So I wonder if you could give us a closing thought that sets our gaze forward.
Well, hang on. There's a couple things I have to do first, like a couple quick things that I have to get off my chest. First, I want to thank Merv Lappin and his wife, Laney. Merv was in the bubble with Sarah and I in Beijing, as all you readers of the Vail Daily know, because I know there was a story there. Merv was in the bubble with us in Beijing for 3 weeks. So when he called me about this and said, could you get Sarah? I'm like, yeah, I think I can ask Sarah on this one. I think I'm okay going to Sarah on this one to come to Vail for a night. So Merv and Laney, who moved, had to go back home already, and thank you for your hospitality this week. I want to recognize, this is an interesting thing that I've vetted a couple times with Sarah's team, and it's an incredible number. In the history of the Winter Olympics, there have only been 2,200 people that have represented Team USA. So obviously I mentioned Hilary Knight's going to be a 5-time Olympian, right? So she only counts once.
Yep.
So 2,200 people in the history of our country have participated in the Winter Olympics, and we have one from hockey sitting right here in Pam Dreyer. So I thought that was cool, and then I want to make sure to introduce one of my teammates. Tammy Tranter is here with us. Tammy is the Chief Development Officer for our foundation. We are funded through membership. We have 65% of our revenue comes from kids and families and coaches that play hockey around the country, but we raise money on the foundation to help put back in the game, grow the game, support our international teams as well. So I want to make sure at least I introduce Tammy to be here. Now, what was I asked for a closing there?
Help us look forward to this Winter Olympics.
I think, again, I mean, we all love this country, right? And we're all fans of the Olympics. And I know when the Summer Olympics are on, I watch sports that I may never watch until 4 years later. And I get into it. I mean, I have, again, 4 brothers, we all played hockey. The biggest conversation we had during the Paris Olympics was about that women's rugby game that ended on like a walk-off win. The last thing on earth we thought we'd be talking about, we spent an hour talking about it. It was amazing. That's the power of the Olympics and the beauty of it. And I think the best part is, especially in our organization, where as mentioned, we have more than 1 million people involved, from volunteers to participants. The players and athletes that show up at the Olympics don't just show up at the Olympics or Paralympics, right? They started in a community somewhere. Someone helped tie their skates when they were 5 years old to get them started in hockey. And then they get to participate and represent our country. And that's so meaningful. And again, they do that to try and win for sure. But if you listen to a lot of the athletes, they'll tell those stories of the people who got them there, which to me is really what it's all about. Like, the athletes are incredible. They've given up so much to get there, but their parents, their families, their friends, their youth coaches, and so many other people are part of the journey. So for all these Olympians and Paralympians, you'll see, you know that, you'll have some that probably came through here in skiing and other sports or whatever. But that's what I think hopefully makes all of us feel like that everyone's a part of Team USA. We get to do it on a daily basis, but every 2 years in the winter summer cycle, we all get to do it and be a part of Team USA. So I hope all of you at least carry that feeling with you when we're in Milan and Cortina this year in February.
Mark it down. NBC, Peacock, come with us. We're happy to have you come with us. If you want to come watch live. It's Italy, pasta, wine. Who doesn't want to come to Italy?
All right, so Sarah and Pat, we know that we'll get to watch the fruits of your labors starting in February. Rachel, I'm so excited that you're here. Where can we follow your reporting of everything that's happening?
Sportsbusinessjournal.com. I post it everywhere, so if you find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever, Blue Sky, I'll be on the ground trying to sneak in some pasta between running around covering these folks.
Sportsbusinessjournal.com, and we'll send a link out as well. Please join me in thanking Rachel, Pat Kelleher with USA Hockey, and Sarah Hirshland at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic committees. Especially in a community like this, this is wonderful to have you. It's such a gift to us. Thank you for spending an evening in Vail.